to Collective Leadership and MTSS with Avon Community School Corporation. During our presentation today, you're going to see how we attacked MTSS with Avon over the last 2 years. And through our poster, you're going to get a big idea of collective leadership it took in order to get to where we are today. In our larger graphic right here, it kind of shows you the cycle of collective leadership with MTSS and implementation science, and how we really focused in on the who, the how, and the what in order to get to the why of MTSS. As we went through our journey, something that was very important were teaming and communication loops, and how those all interacted in order to support our understanding of MTSS. Through our teamings, that led us to some big idea frameworks for MTSS, which included the practice profile and our instructional playbook. Most importantly was our shift in thinking. And we really spent a lot of time thinking about how do we take the question of what about the students is causing performance discrepancy and changing that to focus more on what about the environment, the curriculum, and the instruction that needs to be altered. So really that big shift in thinking, and finally that instructional playbook really came out of those big idea frameworks for MTSS. Everything's grounded in implementation science and that formula for success, which you'll see down in the bottom corner. And that is about the what times the how times the who equals the why. And we're going to go more into that in the presentation. So not too concerned if you can't see this very clearly, you will see it in the presentation. But the most important thing about this formula is to understand that all of these items multiply. So if any one of these items become a zero, you're never going to get to your why. And that's something that we really focused on in Avon in order to make our implementation of MTSS as strong as possible. With that being said, we're going to shift over to our PowerPoint presentation and what that collective leadership and MTSS meant through implementing as a comprehensive district system. So today, you're going to see two presenters. Had we done this in real time, you would have seen three. Myself, I am Karen Oliver, MTSS and Assessment Coordinator. Shelley Moyers, who is not here today, she's our Assistant Principal at Cedar Elementary, who played a significant role in the rollout and implementation of MTSS. She is not with us today. Since being an Assistant Principal, she really has a lot of priorities on top of her, as well as you all, I'm sure, have. And then finally, Dr. Terry Terhune, our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, K-12. He will be with us today and helping with this presentation. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Terry Terhune to give you a little more information about the Avon School Corporation.
Thank you, Karen. Here at Avon Community School Corporation, Karen Oliver is in charge of our MTSS development. She is really the person behind our push and drive to make sure that we do not only MTSS well, but do it really following the book and doing as well as we possibly can. She sets up a lot of our meetings, works with an outside consultant to guide us, and has spent a lot of her time developing our processes. Shelley Moyers has also been an instrumental part of this, and then I do the best I can to support both of them as we move along in this journey. A little bit more about Avon Community School Corporation, just some background information for you. Avon is located in Hendricks County, just outside of the Indianapolis metropolitan area. Our current enrollment is just about 10,000 students, give or take a few. We are about 63% white students with 15% African American and 10% Hispanic. And then 5 to 6% of our students are either Asian or multiracial. Our free and reduced population at this time is about 1/3 of our students qualify for free or reduced lunches. And we're kind of right about the state average in special education. About 16% of our students have an IEP and qualify for special education services. And the last component we want to share a little bit about with you is that our English language learners comprise just about 7% of our total population. Within that 7% of our population, we have approximately 87 different languages that are spoken across our district. Just this last year alone, I think we added 3 or 4 new languages to our district. And at this time, I will hand it back over to Karen.
Thank you, Terry. So as we move through this virtual reality and trying to communicate with you our journey, we wanted to set up some objectives so we could keep track of what exactly we are sharing with you, and you can keep in your mind, oh, yep, they really did do that. Now I understand what they meant by that specific idea. So if you take a look at this chart, this is going to take us through this presentation. First, we're going to start off with helping you become more familiar with the implementation tools for a comprehensive approach to MTSS installation in a district. Also, we will examine a collective leadership approach to MTSS. And finally, we will introduce you to some of Avon's MTSS practice profile and other products that we're creating in order to support our teachers and principals. Here's a closer look at our cycle of implementation for MTSS, and it really gives you a more narrow understanding of who was involved with the collective leadership, what we were really trying to accomplish with MTSS, and then how we planned on doing that. Under collective leadership and the who, we really tried to focus on systems thinking, collaborative teams, intensified teams, and the communication loop. That communication loop has proven invaluable to our rollout of MTSS. We, at this time, are breaking MTSS down into 2 different products, which is the practice profile and instructional playbook. And then the how was really grounded in implementation science. And it helped us move through the journey. It helped us organize and create buy-in with leadership. It helped us with organization as well as competency and understanding our own competency from the very beginning to the middle and ongoing. With implementation science, we really grounded ourselves in the formula for success, which is according to National Implementation Research and Research Network. It revolves around the what times the how times the who equals the why. And when you use this, it really is asking you for the what are those effective practices? How, what is the effective implementation you will use? Who, those are the enabling contexts. So it's not only just a person, but also the context that you're in. And then the why, improved outcomes. Those are the generic kind of flow of that success formula. So as we moved through MTSS, we substituted our what was MTSS. How we were going to do this, we were going to do it through pilots, stage-based competence, and organization. Who was going to help us do this? Our school leadership team. Our leadership learning, which involved all administrators at all school buildings, which included an instructional coach, and the DIT, which was the district implementation team. And we hoped through this formula, we would find ourselves with learner, community, and system outcomes. So if we take a closer look at the formula for success in Avon, MTSS really is revolving around pilots, stage-based competence and organization, our school leadership teams, leadership learning, and district implementation team. Some of the pilots that we're doing, we're going to focus on today. Those pilots have really proven to move our collaborative teams to a better place. That's where we started. So coming back to our objectives, we've just accomplished our first one. Those are the implementation tools we've been using to create a comprehensive approach to MTSS within our district. And now we're going to move on to examining a collective leadership approach. So collective leadership effects on teachers are very significant if we look at the research and how important it is to be a united front for teachers. And it really explains 20% variation in student achievement across schools. So being unified in our leadership approach is very important. The strongest relationships exist between collective leadership and teachers' work setting and motivation, and all variables but teacher capacity, which is knowledge and skills, significantly related to student achievement. So we really looked at this research in the very beginning to help us determine that it's so important that we're all on the same page as leaders before we move into sharing what our plan is for MTSS with teachers. Here's a deeper dive into what our teams look like. So we created a learning and continuous improvement continuum for implementation teams. We started with a district management team, which consisted of 5 members, which were our assistant superintendent, our special education director, our director of teaching and learning, and then our curriculum coordinators. Those were what created our management team. From the management team, we moved to the district implementation team. The district implementation team was invaluable in helping us be sure to take into account not only district context, but also school context. What's going on at the school that is going to help us better implement MTSS and help us kind of cover the hurdles or face the challenges that might be happening. And our district implementation team was smaller the first year, and then it grew the second year. From the district implementation team, we look at leadership learning, which, as I said before, includes all our principals, assistant principals, and our instructional coaches at every school within our district, K-12. From the leadership learning, we moved to the school leadership team, which this is not a new concept. However, what we did this year was we repurposed the school leadership team to be more specifically focused on how are we going to learn about MTSS? How are we going to have a shared understanding of MTSS in order to move forward with all staff within Avon? And then finally, the last step, universal, supplemental, and intensified teams. These are sometimes referred to as PLCs. We've been discussing a collaborative teams approach with a PLC focus. And all of these levels of teams, the number one, you'll see that number one bullet is about building understanding in MTSS and implementation. So each team is really focused around similar ideals and similar goals. And what this does is then it allows us to use those teams as a communication loop for data and feedback and supports for practice and enabling texts. So important and something that you recognize, I'm sure, as a school or district leader. And at the same time, we found out that we were not as intentional as we thought with our communication loops until we started doing this. So this has really helped us focus and target our teaming and communication. The research that we used for implementation teams was revolved around the implementation science from NIRN, NIRN, National Implementation Research Network. And what they have proven through research and evidence is that if you do not have an implementation team and you're beginning to try a new initiative, a new curriculum, a new project of any kind, if you do not have an implementation team, you will reach an implementation level of 14% in 17 years. Not good, right? So if you look at the science behind implementation teams, you're looking at an 80% implementation within 3 years, which is what we always hear. It takes 3 years to make something happen. And if you're not intentional about your implementation team and structure, you're not going to hit that 80% in 3 years. So this was something we really grounded ourselves in the very beginning of our MTSS journey. So looking at year one for our district implementation team, that was the only group that talked about MTSS to begin with. And what we did in that first year was we established form and function. We developed a shared understanding of MTSS, and then we designed version 1.0 of MTSS guidance, which included a practice profile, which we are going to talk about in just 1 minute. So during that version 1.0 of MTSS guidance, it was really tough conversations and discussion about what will MTSS look like in Avon, and how are we going to be intentional in identifying whether we're in full implementation or partial. In order to get to that kind of rubric or practice profile, we really had to develop understanding of MTSS through the lens of beliefs about teaching and learning. We had to self-assess ourselves on our own knowledge of MTSS. We had to then, based on that self-assessment, we developed shared understanding. We used monthly professional learnings where we really looked at data, which initially revolved around our own understanding and learning about MTSS. And then based on that self-assessment, then that shared understanding, we began to develop agreements on components of that practice profile. At this time, we have examined the collective leadership approach for MTSS and Avon. We will be transitioning to the final bullet, which is introducing you to the practice profile and instructional playbook. I will turn it over to Dr. Jim.
So during our journey of learning about MTSS, we've developed overarching frameworks to drive our work, including things such as the practice profile, our instructional playbook, and really more importantly, how we shift our thinking about students and learning. We've shifted away from that traditional mode of I taught it, they should have learned it, to more about looking at our curriculum, looking at our instructional practices, our environment, our learning environments, how our learners are reacting to things, and really trying to determine what's going to make the best shift or the best way for all of our students to learn. Within our practice profile, there are 6 different categories that we have developed. And within those 6 categories, there are 16 different components that we are working on. And the way we judge how we are doing on implementing those, we term our implementation status. For example, a component may have full implementation status. That means simply that it is completely ready to go and that we are fully utilizing it. Other implementation statuses would be developing, beginning, or again, full. Within the practice profile, there are 6 categories that I mentioned. For example, under collaborative teams, there happens to be 3 different components. Those components would be universal teams, intensified teams, and collaborative teams. We term collaborative teams what a lot of other schools call PLCs. These are work within our schools to develop common assessments, to talk about data, and various aspects like that. Within our universal team, we look at indicators such as using our classroom teachers with supports from special education, Title I, and or EL if relevant, and all of those teachers and people working together to support our students using data to inform instruction. In our district, we are developing a instructional playbook. This playbook falls under our category of universal, and within that, it is our 4th component that we term instruction or methods. An instructional playbook is simply a set of practices that will be used across our district by all teachers at all grade levels. The instructional playbook is comprised of instructional practices that have a high effect size and impact positively what's being taught or learned in our classrooms. As you can see on this slide, there are 4 other indicators that we use here in Avon to identify how we are doing and where we're at with developing the instructional methods in our classrooms. In the last 6 months, we have read these 7 different books to help us build our instructional playbook. Each of these books touches on different aspects of instruction, everywhere from dealing with children in poverty and helping us to better instruct them, as well as practices that will improve students in special education, to cultural competency, and just those high leverage, high impact instructional practices. We've taken these 7 books and the information from them and begun to develop our instructional playbook. After reading each of our instructional playbooks, we have sat down as a management team and gone over this series of questions. And basically the discussion points are to develop our understanding of the instructional practices that were presented in each book, as well as determine what is the most important or the ones that will give us the most impact for our teachers. What we're trying to do is take from these 7 books, 25 or so very important, very high leverage, high impact instructional practices so that we can create our instructional playbook and then begin to share that out with teachers. It is highlighting the best practices so that we can have consistency across our district in how we present material.
So that is our final objective today. So today you have become familiar with our implementation tools. We've examined collective leadership, and we introduced you to Avon's MTSS practice profile and instructional playbook. We hope that these 3 important objectives support your journey as you're beginning or continuing your MTSS framework within your own school. One final component we wanted to show is kind of our timeline. Obviously, we're not finished in 2020. Just wanted to show how long it has taken us to develop these tools and to develop the shared and common understanding in those agreements and all of them. And the one I would really like to highlight is that our journey with MTSS began with the very first TitleCon, which happened in 2018. That was such a significant conference that impacted our district in such a way that I'm not sure anyone at the Department of Education knows, but they had a keynote speaker, Michael McSheehan, who at that time worked for the University of New Hampshire, and since then has gone on to create his own company, consulting firm, which is called Evolve and Effect. And you will see it referenced in our brochure, which is uploaded to the DOE website. We created a partnership with him where he has been our technical assistant for MTSS, and he has been invaluable in our learning and our way of approaching implementation and our changing and shifting ideas of what student learning should look like. To wrap up our session, we really want to come back to our poster and also give a huge shout out to the Department of Education for having that first TitleCon. Without that first TitleCon and our introduction to Michael McSheehan, I'm not sure that our rollout of MTSS would have looked quite like it does today. We're very we are excited about our progress and the process that we're using for MTSS. It really showed us how collective leadership is really tied to implementation in order to get us to our goal, which is MTSS, and not only MTSS, but a true framework that helps us get teaching and learning to a place of success for all meaning all students. How are we impacting them? And that collective leadership was so important because it allowed us to create those communication loops that helps us get not only district ideas, but all the way down to the student level. And that communication coming back so that it drives our decision making at central office as well as the school itself. We're so excited to continue our work on our practice profile and our instructional playbook, and would like to offer anyone anytime, please feel free to contact Dr. Terhune or myself. Michael McSheehan's information you can find on the products that have been uploaded to the Department of Education. I hope you have enjoyed the presentation and are able to take some strategies back to your own schools so that you can continue your work with MTSS as well.